In a bustling cafe in Lagos, Nigeria, Simbo Olorunfemi, a thoughtful economist, sits across from Samuel Deminas, a fervent free market advocate. Simbo says, "Samuel, I have been mulling over the devaluation of Naira. You believe it's a silver bullet for our economic woes?" Samuel leans in and replies, "Absolutely. If we devalue the Naira to 320 Naira to $1, imported goods will become too expensive for most people. This will force local businesses to step up and produce substitutes. Plus, banks will be more willing to lend to those who can contribute to local production." Simbo frowns and asks, "But what about the cost of inputs for local businesses? Wouldn't the devalued Naira just make machinery and raw materials more expensive, pushing up production costs?" Samuel waves his hand dismissively and says, "Not if the Naira remains stable at that rate. We would be creating an environment that encourages local production and reduces dependency on imports." In a market in Abuja, vendors and buyers haggle over goods. Simbo walks up to a vendor selling locally made rice. The vendor gestures to the rice and says, "The price of this has gone up again. Can you believe it?" Simbo nods and asks, "How do you think the devaluation has affected your business?" The vendor shakes his head and replies, "It's a nightmare. We rely on imported machinery to process rice, and now those costs are through the roof. It's hard to keep up with prices, let alone make a profit." A customer interjects, "My salary hasn't increased, but everything I buy is more expensive. It's frustrating." In a university lecture hall, Rick Roden and Kehinde Emoruwa are speaking at a seminar. The room is packed with students and economists. Rick Roden addresses the crowd. "Africa's struggle with industrialization is partly due to the free market policies imposed by the IMF and World Bank. Countries were advised against using industrial policies that could protect and nurture local industries." Kehinde Emoruwa nods and adds, "Exactly. Devaluation might work for export-driven economies, but for a country like Nigeria, which relies heavily on imports, it only exacerbates inflation and reduces purchasing power." An audience member raises a hand and asks, "So what's the alternative?" Rick Roden smiles and replies, "We need to focus on policies that build local capacities, protect local industries through temporary tariffs, and support them until they can compete globally." Kehinde Emoruwa emphatically adds, "And invest in infrastructure and skills development to support those industries. Without that, any gains from devaluation will be short-lived." In the office of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the room is filled with policymakers and economists debating the latest economic report. Economist 1 points at a graph and says, "The Naira is under tremendous pressure. We have maintained it around 360 to $1, but it's clear that further devaluation is being pushed by experts." Economist 2 sighs and responds, "But what if further devaluation leads to higher inflation and makes our local industries even less competitive? We've seen the results of past devaluations." A policymaker says, "Seriously, we need to consider alternative approaches. Perhaps a mix of protective measures and strategic investment could stabilize the economy without solely relying on currency devaluation." On a crowded street in Lagos, Simbo walks past several shops with signs advertising products at inflated prices. A shopkeeper said to Simbo, "Business is slow. I used to import a lot of goods, but now, with the Naira's instability, it's hard to keep prices consistent." Simbo thoughtfully asks, "How do you manage the impact of currency fluctuations on your business?" The shopkeeper shrugs and replies, "It's tough. We are caught between rising import costs and dwindling customer spending power. Sometimes I wonder if the experts really understand what it's like on the ground." Simbo nods and says it's clear that theoretical solutions don't always translate well into practice. The realities of the markets are far more complex. In Simbo's study room, filled with books and papers, Simbo sits at his desk, reflecting on recent events and conversations. Simbo writes in a journal, "The debate over the Naira value highlights a fundamental divide, the theoretical versus the practical. While devaluation is advocated by some as a panacea, it's clear that Nigeria's challenges are rooted in deeper structural issues." Simbo's voiceover continues, "To navigate this economic wilderness, we need a multifaceted approach. It's not just about currency values or policy prescriptions, but about creating a resilient economy that can thrive despite global uncertainties." Simbo closes the journal and adds, "Perhaps the path forward lies not in adopting singular solutions, but in embracing a diverse strategy that addresses both immediate needs and long-term goals." Epilogue. At a community center in Lagos, Simbo addresses a group of local entrepreneurs and community leaders. Simbo says with optimism, "The road ahead is challenging, but by working together and focusing on the sustainable, inclusive strategies, we can build an economy that serves everyone, not just a select few." A community leader nods and agrees. "Let's start with practical steps that make a real difference in our daily lives. Our collective effort is what will truly drive change." The group exchanges determined nods as they begin planning their next steps.